Okay, so we're going to learn an interesting Gemara from Sanhedrin. The Gemara is dealing with telling us the story of Korach, this week's parsha, right? So we're going to learn about Korach this week, and a very fascinating part of our history because it's not such a clean-cut story, as we all know. Let's bring up the text here.
Many sign salts for the special guest this week.
Okay, nice, beautiful.
Oh, you would have gotten a cookie.
Well, he spoke on the parsha.
No, he talked about himself basically.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It's like
His story of his all those.
father, yeah.
Yeah. He's on a tour for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I thought of you. If you were here, you would have gotten a cookie.
Baruch Hashem. I would have, strongly. All right, so this is famous Gemara called Chelik. Gemara Chelik is depending on how you look at it, the Mishnah is set up or the Talmud set up, but it's the final parak of Sanhedrin. It's almost like its own idea. We know that the Rambam, who has a Pirush Mishnayos on the Rambam, there's a commentary of the Rambam on Mishnayos. He has a special Hagdama, special what's called preface for the Parak Chelik. Why? What's a special Parak Chelik? And many people do, not just the Rambam. What's a special Parak Chelik? Chelik deals with the difficult questions of Olam Haba, world to come, afterlife. Who has a portion in the world to come? Who doesn't have a portion in the world to come? Are there any exceptions? Everyone knows Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik L'Olam Haba. We always say it. Everyone has a portion in the world to come. But that's the part we talk about. But the Mishnah continues, and there's an exception to the rule. And the rest of the Chelik deals a lot with this subject of who's the exception and the stories behind those people. Most of the people are leaders of their times, kings of David or of Yisrael, other people that we've read about and we learned about in the Chumash or Tanakh. And we're holding now on page 9, I think it's 9b, we're holding now the discussion about both Korach and the spies. So the Mishnah says, this is quoting from the Mishnah, that Meraglim ein lam chelik l'olam haba. The spies don't have a portion in the world to come. Shenemer.
That's a Mishnah.
It's a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in Mishnayos. Again, Parak Chelik is a hard parak to learn because first of all, it's a lot of Agada, which is very important. I taught it just recently, and it was very hard to prepare because there's so much angles going on. But primarily the issue is brings up all the machlekes about Olam Haba, world to come, and the afterlife, etc.
109b, right?
109b, yeah. You scroll down. You gotta scroll down. Scroll down, and you'll see it starts off saying the Mishnah teaches the spies. Look at this. No, first of all, it talks about people who already lived, but it talks about
crossing a river.
What?
Crossing a river.
I'll continue going down then. So we cross the river and then continue walking down. But some people actually, they do give definitions of certain people that wouldn't be worthy if they did X, Y, and Z. So if those people live in the future, they also wouldn't be worthy to come. But when we talk about specific people, we're talking about people that lived already by the time of the Mishnah. It's not so simple. There's a famous story that I think it's brought down actually in Chelik. There's a famous story told that I think it was Achav Melech Yisrael. He's on the list. The Gemaras go back and try to say that all the people do have a chelik. I'm not an authority. I don't want to mix into anyone's covet. We're just learning the text. But there's some opinions. The Gemara goes back and says that only one or two of the individuals, the other ones did tshuva. They had some sort of atonement and repentance. But one of the people on the list is Achav Melech Yisrael, Achav the king of Israel. Now Achav Melech Yisrael was the next big king after Yeravam. We learned about Yeravam. Yeravam was the first king of Israel, he was a very worthy student of Achia Shaloni. He went off the derech. He built the two statues up in the north, in Dan and in further north, to disrupt the people from going to the temple. We learned about Yeravam. The next big king after Yeravam is Achav. It means there was a few kings in between, but they were just the next big king afterwards was Achav. Achav was, the Gemara says about Achav that Achav was a Moshel Bekipa. He ruled. He had an empire. He ruled the world. I'm not sure what that means, but so I think you have to learn your value better. So they talked about him. Let's talk tomorrow about Achav, who doesn't have a portion in the world to come. So the Gemara says Achav came into a dream to that scholar, I think it was Rabbi Ashi, I forget who it was, who was going to talk about him the next day in the yeshiva. Obviously not to talk nicely because he doesn't have a portion of the world to come. Because dial it down a bit. You're going to talk about me. I know how to learn better than you. And it's a famous halach he asked him, how do you cut the bread on Shabbos? When you break through a loaf of bread, how are you supposed to cut the bread? At what point of the bread do you cut? We don't just cut the bread. There's a halach, it's called b'tzias pas. How do you cut a loaf of bread? And he didn't know. So he says, I'll tell you. You can't cut it too much to the end because that's the burnt part of the bread. Too much in the middle, it's not the perfect part of the bread. It's too large. You're supposed to cut it. That's what our custom till today. We know from this Gemara, we cut it 1/3. You're supposed to cut 1/3 into bread. That's the perfect slice of bread.
Why?
Because that's where it gets the best amount of heat.
This is a halach.
Yeah, halachim b'tzias pas. And we know it from Achav Melech Yisrael, who came to a dream and told him, you don't even know how to cut bread. So before you start talking about me, learn the laws of cutting bread. And to break in general, whenever you break the bread, whenever you break a bread, you have to cut it at its best spot.
Cut, slice.
Yeah.
Rip.
That's because of Shabbos. Even where do you rip from? For instance, I learned from my father-in-law. So when you cut it at 1/3, right? You can't eat 1/3 or even 1/3 of bread. You can do a second slice, right? So where do you cut the second slice from? So when I first got married, I was sitting by my father-in-law and I cut the bread at 1/3. I knew the Gemara, so I learned the halach, I learned 1/3. But then I went and I cut from the smaller piece, to cut off a slice. Yeah. He said, no, you cut from the bigger piece. So you cut the bread in 1/3, and then on the largest part you cut your first slice of bread. That's the most chashuv thing to do.
Is it the fairish or law?
These are the laws of b'tzias pas, of cutting bread.
Yeah, but when you say it's a lot, it cuts it differently.
That can be varies. It's the way you're supposed to do it. It's not a minute. It's brought down. It's a sip and shulchan aruch. B'tzias pas.
It says this is the custom that we have.
He's supposed to cut it at the best thing. Could be right. We'll check in the text. All right. I just wanted to bring the point about people who don't have a world to come. So here we say, the spies don't have a portion of the world to come. How do we know? So we have a support of a verse. The verse says, again, the Torah doesn't just talk. Every word in the Torah is calculated. So the Torah says that Vayamusu, they died. So we know that they died. And then it says, what did they do? They spoke negative about Eretz Yisrael. And how did they die? Why does the Torah have to tell us the second word b'magefa? So in a plague. So the Gemara says, "Vayamusu ba'olam hazeh," they died in this world. B'magefa l'olam haba, the plague is referring to the world to come. So they don't have a portion in the world to come. Starting off with an argument with Ramban, Nachmanides, and Rambam, the Maimonides, is what is the world? What are we talking about? The world to come? Are we talking about? You just threw me off with your Siach. When we're talking about, are we talking about the afterlife? Are we talking about after Yemaisa Mashiach? When is the world to come? That's its own discussion. But they don't have a portion of the world to come, and the pasuk supports that Vayimusu b'magefa means ba'olam hazeh la'olam haba. Okay. Like Rabbi Steinzalt says, on basis of the by plague is interpreted as a reference to the world to come. Why is a plague the world to come? Apparently, this explanation is not based on the term by plague, but on the entire phrase by plague before the Lord. This indicates that they were stricken from before the God, and that they no longer exist before him, even for the world to come. So says the Chaim Yerushalayim. Okay. Now this gets to our Gemara. The Mishnah continues. Adas Korach. What about Korach's Chevra? Adas means the assembly of Korach. They also do not have a portion in the world to come. Shenemar, as it says, Batchas aleim arts, they were swallowed up from the earth, right? So the earth opens its mouth, Batchas aleim, and it covers them over. What?
And the Rebbe definitely says somewhere, and I don't know where, but it definitely says somewhere that since Hashem knows who everybody is, that there were several people, that he knew that they were coming from the right place, so they were saved.
Yes, we're going to learn that in the Gemara. There's certain people that, and there's a machlekes if they do tshuva or not, if they fix their problem. But the Gemara starts off with the initial statement is the assembly of Korach don't have a portion in the world. There's a famous story of a Cantonist. You know what a Cantonist was? A Cantonist was in the time of the Tsar, I think it's Nicholas II, I think, or the first, that they passed a decree against the Jewish children to take Jewish children to the army for like 30, 40, 50 years, for a long period of time. And basically that destroyed the child's life because he was taken away at 5, 6 years old, raised, usually forced to baptize, or if not, they were put into tremendous. It was it's called the Gezer of the Cantonistim. It was a very horrible time for the Jewish people in Russia. It was socially unacceptable. Basically, the Russians government forced the community to give them a certain amount of children. And unfortunately, what the communities did was they gave the poor kids. They didn't give the rich kids. So it was nasty from all sides. It was a really horrible decree. It's called the decree of the Cantonistim. There was a Cantonist, famous story. There was a Cantonist that was very good at us being a soldier. And the Tsar came in, or the top minister came in and wanted to do a drill and see who could do a certain maneuver in the army, some sort of maneuver. And he said, whoever is going to be successful is going to be promoted to high rank in army. And this Jewish boy, this Cantonist, was the only one who was able to do the maneuver. And so the reward was he gets to get this upgrade. But there was a problem. The Tsar, I think it was the Tsar himself, said that he won't give a Jew such a promotion because a Jew should never be so high in the army. So i.e. he's forcing him to baptize. He wasn't asking him. So he wanted him to be a soldier. He wanted to give him the promotion, but he wanted to force him to baptize. The child didn't know what to do. And he gave him 3 days, I think. Shabbos, he was supposed to go in to be baptized, and then he was supposed to get the promotion. And so he didn't know what to do. They had some sort of freedom. It wasn't like they were locked in jail. So they were able to what they call dray around. They were able to go. So he didn't know anything. Again, they were raised with no education. So he walked into a shul, and he asked them, he said, if someone converts out, are you Jewish still? So he says, you're always a Jew, but you're Yisrael Mumar, you're a person who converted out. That's very severe. Because if someone commits suicide, do I have a portion in the world to come? Does someone have a portion in the world to come if he commits suicide? So they didn't know what they were answering. They didn't know his dilemma. So they said, no, a person commits suicide doesn't have a portion in the world to come. So he walked out of the show, and the famous thing was that he goes, but does he remain Jewish? He goes, yes, he remained Jewish, but so he was, the famous story that he was going over the bridge on the way to be baptized, and he jumped off the bridge, and they heard him say that I may not have a portion in the world to come, but at least I'm a Jew. So this idea of Ein Chelik Le'olam Haba, it's not always so simple. All right. So how do we know that the congregation, the assembly of Korach, don't have a portion in the world to come? It says V'tchaselei ma'aretz, that they were covered over. O'ilam hazeh means they were covered over in this world. They were swallowed up. V'yoivdu mitoich hakal, they were lost from the congregation, from the assembly, meaning they were lost O'ilam haba for the world to come. So again, we have they lost both this world and the world to come. Divrei Rabbi Akivah, this is the opinion of Rabbi Akivah. So Rabbi Akivah is only the one who holds that they don't have a portion in the world to come. Rabbi Elazar disagrees with him. Rabbi Elazar says, Aleim ha'omer ha'kasav, you're wrong. The pasuk says, Hashem meimis u'machaya, God strikes or kills u'machaya and gives life. Moirid she'ol v'yoel, he lowers to the grave, to the abyss, and he rises up. Who is this talking about? This is talking about Korach's camp. That although they died, and although they were taken down and says they were swallowed, Chaim Sha'ol, nevertheless they rise up. He disagrees with his student, really. Rabbi Akivah is the student of Rabbi Elazar. He disagrees with him, and he says no, that the pasuk actually in Samuel is referring to. You have to remember something. Korach is not simple. I'm sure you learned this throughout the classes this week. Korach is, besides being a great Torah scholar, and besides being a wealthy man, we're going to learn he was very wealthy. He was also the forefather of Samuel, the prophet. Shmuel Hanavi is a descendant of Korach. So when he says Hashem meimis machai moed she'al v'yoel, it's in Samuel. That's the prayer of Hannah, Samuel's mother. This is personal. So he says that they die, but they have the resurrection. They get out of the abyss, out of the she'al. So this is a disagreement. Okay. Now the Gemara continues. Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learned a brisa. Das Korach and On. Again, the congregants of the assembly of Korach do not have a portion of the world to come. Again, supporting the same verse. Vatchas leim aretz v'olam hazeh v'yoivdu mitecha kol olam haba. Div Rabbi Akivah. It's a good question. The problem with this Gemara is that there's an opinion that in this whole Mishnah that says the whole generation of the desert don't have a portion of the world to come. So the question is why is this exclusive? Maybe there are different opinions, but this seems to be just the 200. We're talking about just the 250 of his actual assembly. The bystanders were just watching. You have to remember, this is a very hard time in the Jewish people's history. This is after the spies, so they know they're not going into the land. So they pivoted from what they were thinking, and they started to think about what are we doing here in the desert for the next 40 years, and who's in charge. It was it felt like a bit of a lost cause. So we have Vayovi Dimitecha Kol and La'ilam Haba. So says the opinion of Rabbi Akivah. Div Rabbi Akivah. Now we bring another opinion, not Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yehuda ben Besaira. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Besaira, says, Harihein ka'aveda hamisvakeshes. He says even more. They're like a lost item that is being sought. You have to remember the spies, although the spies were anshe shem, they started off as good people, but they had a issue with the whole avodah. This is again before. This is when they thought the Jewish people are going to the land. They didn't want to do what Hashem wanted. Hashem says you have to go into the land. Eretz Nosheves, you have to go. And they said we don't want to go to the land. We want to stay in the desert. Right? Comes Korach. Korach is saying everyone's holy. He's coming from a certain holy place. So he says. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Besaira says they're like a lost item. Hamisbakeshes. How do we know? He brings a verse to support it from Shtelim. Ta'isi kaseh oived. I've gone astray like a lost sheep. Bakish avdecha. Seek out your servant. Ki mitzvah. We haven't forgotten your mitzvahs. They never went against, so to say, they didn't go against Torah. It means they held that everyone's holy. Although they mocked him with the tzitzis, as we learn, and the mezuzah, but they came from at least their initial angle or their narrative was from a holy place. So both Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yehuda ben Besaira disagree with Rabbi Akivah, and they hold that the Adas Korach, the assembly of Korach, is going to have a portion of the world to come. The only one who holds they don't is Rabbi Akivah.
Yeah. The Zuzas and the
Tzitzis.
and the tzitzis. What? I mean,
Well,
I don't get it. I mean, it was fairish. It was what it was. It's like, just because I have a mezuzah, just because I have a room full of books doesn't mean I don't need a mezuzah.
yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of explanation out there. Rebbe talks about this. There's a lot of my Mark Sidis, a lot of different Musar ideas, but where they were coming from is Kikola Eda Kulum Kadosha, meaning what was the connection to the mezuzah, for instance, a Moshe? What did they say? That's what Rashi says. What is it? The verse in Tehillim says, the reason why God seeks them out is because they didn't forget the mitzvahs. He said, Kol Eda Kadoshim, everyone's holy. They're saying, if you have a room full of books, what's so special about the mezuzah? If all the Jews are holy, why do you need Moshe Rabbeinu? That's what we're trying to compare it. You're saying if you have if there's a lot of sforim, the whole room is holy. You need a special mezuzah to be specially on the wall. That symbolizes something different than the whole room is full of Sifrei Torah. Why do we have to have a mezuzah there? All the community is Jewish, is holy. So they were kind of trying to figure out what's this idea of a nasi, of a leader. They were fighting against Moshe's being the leader. So here we learn something. We're going to get to an interesting idea. Now they're going to do what the Gemara does all the time. We've done it before. We're going to analyze the name of Korach to understand what he was doing. Gemara says, "Vikach Korach Amrei Shlakish." Rish Lakish teaches us, "Shlakach mikach ra la'atzmei." He made a bad business deal. Mekach is when lakach to take. He made a bad acquisition because it didn't work out for him, right? Korach shenase Korach of Yisrael. Also, Korach is he created a split amongst the Jewish people. Ben Yitzhar, his father is Yitzhar. Ben Shirtiach alav es kol ha'olam katzarayim. It says that the son of Yitzhar is a son who who incited the wrath of the entire world upon him like the afternoon sun. So Yitzhar is from the word Saharayim, the afternoon sun. Kahas is the father of Yitzhar, is Ben Shihika Shine Meilidon. So he says, what is Kahas? So he says, one who blunted the teeth of his parents, meaning they were shamed with him, his behavior. And Ben Levi, Ben Shinasa Lavoya Begehenim, he accompanied hell, because he went to hell. Basically, you have to remember something unique about the whole story of Korach. What's unique about the story of Korach? This is the first time the Levites go astray. Up until that point, always the Levites were with Moshe, with God, not by the Egel, not in Egypt. In Egypt, they circumcised. In Egypt, they learned. They weren't part of the slavery. They never tried to assimilate. According to Rambam, when Rambam discusses the tribe of Levi, basically, for all practical purposes, Judaism was kept by the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi never were slaves. They never left. They never served idols. They during the 210 years in Egypt, at some point, the rest of the tribes were totally assimilated. Maybe individuals not, but as a group, the Jewish people were turned into Egyptians. Besides their clothing and their language and their names, they basically were Egyptians. They didn't do it. They halalu of the avodah zarah, halalu of the avodah zarah. The angel says, "What's so special about the Jewish people? They're all the same." The only ones who really kept, the Rambam writes, is the only ones who kept the faith, who kept it. I mean, when the Rambam describes how Avram Avinu, so to say, discovered the one God, that idea, the Rambam says, was lost in Egypt. The ones who kept to the truth of Avram was the tribe of Levi. So here the tribe of Levi is with Moshe, Mila Hashem Elai, every single member of the tribe of Levi is faithful. And here the tribe of Levi goes down.
What happened?
So here, so they became a Leviah, they became they accompanied, so to say, the to hell. What happened? Why did they go astray? At the end of the day, covet gets the best of us. They wanted recognition. Covet there's a lot of things in life that could take a person down. But when we're younger, it's our evil inclination, our taivas. We desire things. We look at things. We desire things. We want to do things that the Torah says no. We want to eat non-kosher, be with girls, whatever it is. Everyone has their things that they struggle with. When you get older, it's not so much. You always have those struggles, but the covet usually gets a person. You want to be recognized. You want everyone to know how great you are. Korach was, what did he say? Everyone's holy. Why am I not a prince? Why am I not in any position of importance? Usually, covet is usually what's his.
What's interesting about it, it's like Korach was like, in a way, like he had a decent argument. It wasn't a bad argument. There were a lot of very high people involved, but he was really talking about like a horizontal frame of society. Right, where everyone's holy, and you have this whole dynamic. As Moshe was having this kind of like vertical top-down. Mm-hmm. But the part that's interesting is that when they go into the land of Eretz Yisrael, that horizontal reality does come into play.
Not necessarily in a good way.
I'm just saying, but it's still that was before they had a king. It was a horizontal.
Yeah, and it was chaos.
It was like ahead of his time a little bit.
Well, according to Chassidus, he was ahead of his time because he saw the Mashiach. He sees things in the perspective of Mashiach. Okay. So the Gemara says, why don't we mention Yaakov? It says Ben Kahas, Ben Levi. Why isn't Yaakov mentioned? So we know, like why? He pushed himself into hell. Yaakov said, don't mention me. When Yaakov gives a blessing to Levi and Shimon, he says, He says, let my soul not come into their council, to their assembly, let my honor not be united. Don't mention me in your stories, both for Shimon and Levi. So he says, he didn't want to be mentioned when it comes to the Meraglim. He didn't want to be mentioned when it comes to Korach. Yaakov says, this is not my fight. Don't mention me. I don't want to be mentioned. Don't mention my name. Later, they do mention Yaakov. When? Rashi says, they mention him on the Aladuchan. When we talk about the different tribes of families of Levi that are in Divrei Hayamim, when we mention the different families of Levi that have their jobs in the temple, then he does want to be mentioned. But in the story of Korach, he says, don't mention my name. Okay, the Gemara continues. Dasan, What is Dasan? Dasan is one of the Chevra who we know about Dasan, right? Dasan and Aviram, the two people that been fighting with Moshe ever since Moshe has been around. So Dasan, it's funny, it's like almost like a movie. When you have a movie, Ronnie, you'd maybe appreciate this. Yeah, movie, a lot of what do they call extras? A lot of people that there's a few stars, a few characters that are part of the story. So in the Torah, it's almost like that. It's almost like that as well. There's 600,000 people. We're always talking about the same group of people. Dasan, Aviram. I mean, there's a few people that are never mentioned by name. Dasan and Aviram are there, but Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to release the Jewish people. He's there. They're trying to mess up the man. They're going out, putting out the man on Shabbos. So they're troublemakers that you think. I mean, of 600,000 people, why did their name always get mentioned? But either way, Dasan Sha'avral Daskel. Why was his name Dasan? The word Das, he's overall a Das. He leaves the covenant. Aviram she'ibad atzimas is tshuva. He didn't allow himself to do tshuva. You know that Dasan and Aviram are the two people that are fighting when Moshe sees two people fighting. And they say to him, who are you? The story is brought down. It's actually connected to Korach. I heard an interesting idea that Dasan and Aviram, who is Aviram? Aviram is the same person that a few days earlier, the Mitzri is beating. Remember the story? Moshe is beating a Mitzri. Well, Moshe kills a Mitzri. Why? Because a Mitzri is beating a Jewish guy. Who is this Jewish guy? The Rashi says the husband of Shlomis Bas Divri. Shlomis Bas Divri was her later. A few weeks ago, we learned about her son. Her son was the one who cursed God. So it says that his mother was Shlomis Bas Divri, and his father was the Egyptian. So who is Shlomis Bas Divri? Who is her husband? Her husband was Aviram. Why was he a son of a Mitzri? Because he was a result of the Mitzri who was sleeping with Shlomis Bas Divri. But he wasn't cast out. He wasn't yet cast out of the tribe of Reuven. Why? Because we didn't know that he was the son of the Mitzri. Why? Because the lacha is roiv bila sachar bal. Even if a woman has relations outside of her marriage, we don't accuse the children to be mamzerim, because we say she's also with her husband. So therefore, roiv bila sachar bal, unless she's mamish all over the place. So in this case, also they said roiv bila sachar bal. Most of the time, you have to assume that the father is her husband, not the person she was with, the Egyptian, even if it was rape or whatever. So she was part of Reuven. When Korach's story happened, all Dasan and Aviram's families get swallowed up. This guy doesn't get swallowed up. Why? Because he's not Aviram's son. He's an Egyptian son. So they realized that he's not Aviram's son. So then they threw him out of the camp. He had to find a new home. All right. So then also, Aviram, so he lost his opportunity to do tshuva. V'oin, also the Gemara, the pasuk continues. There's Oin ben Peles. Sheyashev ba'aninos, he sat in mourning. Peles shenasu plois, he had wonders. Ben Ruvain, ben Shira v'haven, he knew, he was saved. Ninut is who sat in mourning, and like Oinen is this person who's in mourning. So he says he also had miracles, and Reuben, he saw what's going to happen, and he left. If we open up the Chumash in the beginning of Korach, we don't mention who the 250 people were. We said they're great people. We're going to learn they were head of the Sanhedrin. They were great people, but we don't know their names. We only know four names. Korach, Dasan, Avir, and Oin ben Peles. The Torah clearly says Oin ben Peles joined the thing. We don't know so much about Oin ben Peles, but we know here we're starting to learn he doesn't get punished. He backs out. The Gemara doesn't tell us what happened to him. So he was like a mourning. He had miracles because someone saw. We'll see. It's his wife, and saved him. His wife saved him. So the Gemara tells us, Amar Rab. Now the Rab tells us the story. What happened to Oin ben Peles? Oin ben Peles ishta yitzaltu. Oin ben Peles, his wife saves him. Why? Amrle, she says him. She tells him, why are you fighting? Whose fight are you fighting? What's the difference to you? Imar Rabba, if Moshe is in charge, on Talmida, then you're his student. Imar Rabba, if Korach is in charge, on Talmida, you're still a student. You don't get nothing changes in your status. Why would you join? Why are you joining Korach over Moshe? What's in it for you? You have no benefit in this whole fight. Imar, meaning if so and so. Mar is like Mar is a respectful way of calling us a person. If the master is Rabbah, if Moshe is the Rabbah, then you're his student. If Korach's the charge, you're the student. Right? Korach wanted to be in charge. So what is in it for you? You're not going to get any promotion. Maybe you have better context, but protects you. So he said to her, Ma Avid, what should I do? You're right. Hava be'etz, I was part of the plan. Bishtabi li b'hadayu, I swore, they made a covenant, they made a group, we said, no one's backing out. It's not one of these stories where, everyone makes a plan and everyone backs out. That's what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He says, let's go to Paro. The next thing you know is all the 70 elders back out. So these now, Korach says, if you want to join, you have to promise, you have to make a shvuah that you're joining the chevra, this rebellion. So she says here, this is a beautiful story. She says something like this. We're not dealing with lowlifes here, she says. We're dealing, Yadana, we know, the Kula Kenishda Kadish Daninu. We're talking about a community of holy people. These are holy people. That's what what does Korach say? Kol Am Kul Kadashim. They're holy people. They're not going to just do things that are against the Torah. Everyone's holy. You go inside the tent and I'll save you. What does she do? First thing she does is puts him to sleep. She gives him some wine. He caused him to come drunk and laid him inside, and he's asleep. And then she sits, she goes and she sits at the entrance of the tent. So his house is a tent. He's in his tent, he's sleeping, is after he drank too much wine. She lays him inside the tent. She sat at the entrance of the tent. So now she's the protection for Oim Ben Palsa. What's it going to help if she's sitting by the entrance of the tent? So let's turn the page. The Gemara tells us. She covers her hair. And she says, Kulam Kadeshim. She knows as soon as they see a woman with uncovered hair, they're going to run away. They're not going to pursue him. So she saves her husband. The Rebbe talks tremendous about that. I mean, we find there's women have this natural sense of survival, that they know what to do. She didn't go to Moshe Rabbeinu, ask him a psak and say, Moshe, I'm allowed to uncover my hair to sit here to block Oim from Pelet and protect him. Am I, same thing. What was her name? The woman who protected the Jewish people from Sisroi. What was her name in the Haftarah? No, Devorah was the. Yeah. Also, she did what she had to do. Maybe she was Jewish, she wasn't Jewish, but she also did what she had to do to deal with the situation. And Yehudis also did what she had to do to deal with the situation in the story of Hanukkah. And Esther did what she had to do to deal with the situation. And what? Tamar? Oh, and Tamar, exactly. Tamar Yaakov's Yehuda's daughter-in-law did it. So there's certain intuition. That's exactly. There's certain intuition that the woman had. She didn't. Trust me, she didn't go to the show. If she would go to the bezin, they would say you're not allowed to, right? What? It never happened.
So I have a question. So how do we reconcile the fact that the sages teach that Korach's vision was able to, he saw the future, he saw Mashiach, and so he did something in this time or during his time that wasn't so good. And it says that he lost his Olam Haba, but Hashem gave him that ability to see the future. It's not like
that's what she was saying. She was saying these are holy people. When the stakes are high, like in any situation, the reward and punishment is large.
No, but I'm saying if Hashem wakes up and he puts a vision in my head where I clearly see the future reality and I act it out right now without it, it's like as if they had an angel that came and said, "Hey, I gave you the vision, but it's not for right now." You didn't do that. So how does he get punished for that?
This is an idea throughout Torah, throughout our history, not just Torah. Throughout our history, it's not a sign. I think we've learned it. Where did we learn this? We learned this in another piece of Gemara. Not everything. The fact that you know something, or you're in on something, or you have vision, you have certain holiness. That's not necessarily a guarantee that you're going to make the right choices. It means a lot. You could be a holy person. You could be kulam kadashim. You could be all those things. You could have the almost. He was a prophet in some form, right? Really? He knew that he would have a grand. None of that. He knew about Shmuel.
Yeah.
He knew about his grandson Shmuel. Shmuel's not going to live for another 300 years. He knew that he's going to have a grandson Shmuel, and therefore he was sure that he would live. He said, "How could Shmuel be if not for me?" It means if I am the one. He had a kal v'chomer. He had a limud.
Gave him that ability to see that way.
Because it doesn't. Right and wrong is not so black and white. It's not a good person has it has information, a bad person doesn't have information. It doesn't, even though he's called to Russia, because at the end of the day he was married by Malchus. He went against God. He went against Moshe Rabbeinu, and again, that's why Rabbi Akivah, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Yehuda B'Msari don't say that he doesn't have Olam Haba. They call him as a lost article, someone who God's seeking him out. God's looking for him.
Was it Ellie who misread the feminine? So maybe it's the Korach. He was misreading it. He got that vision, but he wasn't.
Listen, who else? The same thing we say about the story of Eshes Potiphar. Eshes Potiphar knows that she's going to have descendants from Yosef.
The opposite could be Pinchas, right?
Why?
Pinchas has a vision to just wipe out everybody, right? I mean that's a big concept. Like he was obviously was the right thing, and he was rewarded for it. But I'm saying, like as a nevuah, what makes his nevuah any different than Korach's nevuah at that moment?
It's a good question you're asking, but I just want to say that in the higher stakes of things, it's not so black and white, and there's delicate situations, there's conversations about situations, and the outcome is not always certain either. Not always what it ends up being. It's what's the famous? There's a famous Gemara. It says that when the whole story happens, David has a few rebellions, right? So his last rebellion was Adoniyahu's son. We read about it in the Haftorah. We read a bit about the Haftorah Chaisar. So he has his son Adoniyahu is rebelling. Why? Because Shlomo Melech is supposed to be king, and God tells him Shlomo is going to be king, and Bathsheba is told, and Nasan Hanavi is told, and it almost went. I mean, they came in there; they were nervous, and they go in there. We don't have the whole part of the Haftorah, but if you read the whole story over there, he says they say go down to the Shiloach, go down to the spring over here, right down over here, and anoint him by the Shiloach. He says, Amen what's the pasuk? Amen ken yeh, something like that. Amen ke, that it should be like that. What you said should be like that. What do you mean should be like that? He just said, do it. Why do you have to ask for bracha? So there's a famous line from here to the Shiloach is harbe ketregim l'matam. There's many adversaries. And God may listen to one of those adversaries that put up a fight that maybe Shlomo shouldn't be king, even though the whole thing is built on Shlomo. Shlomo is Mashiach. So things are not. It's not so black and white as if it's just a book and wait till the next chapter. The chapter is not written yet 100%, and it's not so simple how things may play out. All right. So what does she do? So Visatra Lamazia. So she exposes her here as though she were bathing. Reb Steinzot says, "Called Asya Chazia, whoever came by." Everyone who came by, they see her hair is out. They're holy people. They don't walk into a place that's not sneeze. So until everyone came in to try to chap Oin ben Pelet to bring him to the machlekes, by the time everyone comes through, the story was over. They were swallowed up in Korah, and Oin ben Pelet is saved. It's good, right? It's a very good point. Very good point.
Good point.
That he's saying that from here we see they covered their hair. Very good point. We learned also about David Melech, that she thought she was hiding behind the beehive, and David Melech tried to kill the bird, and the beehive exploded, and he saw her washing her hair. That's the Bathsheba. Okay, so but that's Oin ben Pelet's wife. Oin ben Pelet's wife, she has one in her mind. She has one goal. As that Keres Abayis, we'll learn that there's a pasuk about her. That she's a woman of virtue. I mean, she's a special woman. Why? Because she sees the bigger picture, and she knows one thing. Oin ben Pelet is not continuing on this machlekes. He didn't ask her before. She's not letting him get involved in this machlekes, and she'll do whatever it takes to save him, even to uncover her here and sit outside the tent. What about Korach's wife? Korach's wife is the instigator. Isa, the Korach Armalei, Korach's wife is the total opposite of Oin ben Pelet's wife. Chazi Micah Ovid Moshe. Again, from this we learn, it's interesting. Korach was okay. He was a wealthy guy. And, respectful. He's someone who's mentioned. He knows his great-grandson's going to be Shmuel and Navi. It seems like he was okay with everything in life. His wife is like, no, that's not okay. I don't accept. My husband is not going to be just any other rich guy on the side of sitting on the Mizrach wall. I want him in charge. And so she starts stirring the pot. And she says, look what Moshe is doing to you. You have a malka. He makes himself king. Lachu Shavi Kahana Rabbi makes his brother high priest. Livnei Achuy for his cousins, he makes Shavnei Sagi the Kahana. He makes him the head of the Kohanim. Is the head of the. He makes his nephews the Skan Kohanim. He Asya Truma, and it's not just titles; it's also benefits. If there's tithing, Amr Tev the Kohen, he says the Kohen gets it. First, he makes his brother Kohen, then he says all the tithing has to go to the Kohen, to my brother. The also Meiser, the Shakslu Aton, and if he gives you Meiser, because Meiser goes to the Levite, he says, 1 second, you can't keep all the Meiser. Havu Chad Masar the Kohen, 1/10 of the Meiser, it's called Trumas Meiser to go to the Kohen. So he's this is corruption. This is all family business. What's going on? He asked Meiser the Shakslu Amr Havu Chad Masar the Kohen. You have to give 1/10 of the Kohen. And now she says also, you have to remember, in the past few weeks, we've been learning that the Levites were totally shaved. Our own has a beautiful beard. We talk about it in Tehillim, right? Totally like a cucumber. She was offended. She didn't like that. She didn't like her husband. Whatever. She didn't like the whole look, and she thought it was degrading of the Levites. She says, she says that he shares your hair and waves you. Also, they had to do tnufa. They had to wave the Levites as excrement. She says this is all not nice. And as though he sets his sights on your hair. He doesn't want you to look nice. He wants to degrade you, so the Levites look ridiculous. Let's shave. Kids, when I was a little kid, my grandfather was a survivor from the Holocaust, so he would get these flashes of his life in the shtetl. So he would want us to live out those flashes. So he would walk in every once in a while. We would go there for months at a time. My father was a shliach in Seattle. There wasn't much going on, so he'd go in California all summer. My grandfather walks in one day. He says, he says, guys, I'm taking you to the barber and I'm giving you a zero haircut, because that's what he did when he was in Europe. And he says, don't tell your grandmother, because he knew my grandmother wouldn't like. So I right away knew that was our only salvation. She was like Oim Ben Peles' wife. I had to go tell my grandmother. I said, Bobby, Zaidi wants to give us a zero. So she, of course, put an end to that idea. But he was saying, what do you mean? I used to get a zero when I was a kid. She goes, see, you look ridiculous. So that's what Korach's wife says. You look ridiculous with this shaving of the hair. So he argues back with her. He says, Amrullah, he tells her, you namikovid. He also shaved his hair. From here, we see something crazy. Moshe Rabbeinu was totally shaved because he was a Levite. All those pictures where the movie 10 Commandments, that's evidently how he looked. He also shaved his hair. Amrullah, you don't understand. She says, you don't get it. He's ready. She was such a manipulator. She says, Kivan de kula revusa day. It's all about him. Amru iyu nami Thomas nafshim plishtim. She goes, I'll go down with the plishtim. There's a famous line that till today they use it in the news in Israel. Thomas nafshim plishtim. Where's that line come from? That line comes from Shimshon. That Shimshon claps the towers of the Philistines, and he died with the Philistines. He goes, I'm ready to die as long as the Philistines die. Moshe says, I'm ready to go bald as long as the rest of them are bald. I already have a job. They're going to be looking as secondary ridiculous people with their shaved. I mean, that's how she painted it. So she was basically working on his ego and his self-confidence, obviously. And then she says to Moshe, and furthermore, she says, which he said to you to prepare the sky, blue dye, Isalka daitach tchelta chashiva mitzvah, afik l'gimel to tchelta b'konsul l'kul l'misiftach. If you think this is where it gets to the tchelis, if tchelis is so important, just cover the whole base measures with tchelis. So from here we learn, what do we see? Korach's wife instigated him. Why? One of the things the Eishes Chayil we say, what do we say? One of the things in the Eishes Chayil, the woman talks about the great woman. We say, Noida b'sharim baila. What's it mean, Noida b'sharim baila? So there's a lot of Hasidic explanations to that. But Noida b'sharim baila is simply said, her husband is known at the gates. Why is that a compliment to the woman? Because it is a compliment to the woman. She wants her husband to be a somebody. What is the gates? Were the places where the courts were, right? Lot said at the gate. People said at the gate. Boaz. The gate was where the important people sat in the city. So one of the compliments of a woman is Noida b'sharim baila. Her husband is known at the gates. So she wants her husband to be recognized, and he's not being recognized. So now the Gemara continues. When the pasuk says the wisdom of woman builds her house, a smart woman is not a woman who gets into fights and tiffs and fans her husband's ego in a negative way to make machlekes. A smart woman is the wife of Oyin ben Peles, who builds her home. She knows she has priorities. The velis biyodet harsena, the pasuk continues. Holy plucks it down with her hands. Zu ishtesha Korach. This is the wife of Korach. Korach's wife destroys her family, and Oyin ben Peles's wife saves her family. So we have from here. Obviously, everyone could take their own conclusions from this on Gemara. All right, let's just go a little further, and then we'll just skip to the end, so we shouldn't end on a negative note. The Gemara says that you have to know these 250 people were not just people. They were unique. They were the special people of the Jewish people. Kriyei Moyed, when it says Kriyei Moyed, that means they were scholars. We know that one of the most complex things is the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, is sanctifying the new month. We're about to bless the new month of Shabbos. It's not easy laws. We knew that the descendants of Yisachar, Shabbos is Chavches, but Shabbos is yeah. No, next week is Shabbos. Yeah. The K'vayim Chadoshim, they knew how to leap the years and to set the months. They were well-known people. These were people that were people of stature. So again, they were holy people. So here's one more interesting Gemara that before we go to the end. What does it happen when Moshe hears this whole fight? He falls on his face. So there's a famous answer. What does it mean he falls on his face? That every time you hear critique, you have to first do a quick evaluation to make sure if it's true or not. Maybe it's true. Don't just throw it off. But here the Gemara says, and they said something else. Mashmu Shama. What did he hear that he got so offended? They got so hurt. Moshe was hurt. He fell on his face. So here's Amr Shmuel bar Nachmani Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Nachmani, says in the name of Rabbi Yonasan that he started mamish. Nothing's changed in 5,000 years. Shachashduhu be'eshesish. They accused him of being that Moshe was sleeping with their wives. Said right. Moshe's with the women. How do we know? Because there's a pasuk. It says V'kana Moshe machna. They were jealous of Moshe. Also, when we learned last week Sota, the laws of Sota is the idea of lekani, a husband who's jealous of his wife when she sees she's too familiar with the man, and she says, "Don't hang out with him." So they felt that the women were too familiar with Moshe. They accused him of everything. They accused him of stealing when he built the Mishkan. Right? It says the whole calculation that Moshe had to do in Parshas Pekudei is because they thought they were missing 25 cents. So they accused him of stealing when they built the Mishkan, and the whole reason they built the Mishkan was why? Because they built a golden calf and they needed a kapara. And then they accused them of being with their wives. So we're dealing with Chevra over here. That from this we learn everyone told their wives, stay away from Moshe. I don't want to catch you talking to Moshe. Imagine we look at Moshe now today from the stories that we see it, but at the time, from the way the Gemara described it, he had a very difficult situation. And besides the parts that we know that are difficult, and imagine everyone's walking around saying, "Stay away from Moshe. We can't trust him with our wives." So here there's two understandings. It says after the golden calf in Parshas Kisis, it says he took his tent outside of the camp. So what's the connection to the story? One was because they accused him of sleeping with their wives, he got so offended he moved out. Right? He wasn't in good company. He says, no one likes me, no one trusts me. He moved out. He took his tent, he moved out of the camp. He didn't want to be part of the camp. That's what they accused him of. The others say on the contrary. The whole act, they accused him because he moved out. Because they say the woman would go and ask counsel for Moshe because they want to know the halacha. So they see the wives are always leaving the camp and going to the tent. Why are they going to the tent to Moshe Rabbeinu? They're alone with him. He's not even there with his wife.
How do we understand the Rabbanim who don't meet with women after reading?
Who don't or do?
Who don't.
That's why you have to be careful.
No, but Moshe Rabbeinu clearly was accessible to everyone.
So some Mepharshim say That's that you can't be chayshed that. He always says clearly in the pasuk that Yeshua never left. He was never alone. Yeshua always sat next to him. But the husbands didn't want to, they didn't subscribe to that part of it. They just wanted to accuse Moshe. Again, because it wasn't about, they weren't really concerned. This was just all, they're people that are negative and always trying to find the matzav, always trying to find something to make a story. So Rashi says, why did he move his tent? They should stop accusing him. He took his tent outside. I don't live amongst you anymore. Others say again that he moved because he moved out. Therefore, he had Yeshua there. Yeshua had to go into to be there. That shouldn't be yichud. And they said and they accused him also. He left his wife. Obviously, if he left his wife, he has marital problems. I mean, this again, nothing's changed. Okay. Let's skip. We only have 5 minutes left. I want to at least finish on a positive note of this whole piece of Gemara. The Gemara continues talking about Dasan Aviram and people who argue. Where's first of all, where is the quick Gemara? Where does Korach get so wealthy from? It says Korach. The Gemara says he was so wealthy that either his treasure was taken by what was it, 300 mules, or the keys of his treasure were so heavy and so vast. So the Gemara says, I won't say it inside, but the Gemara says over here that Yosef's treasure, Yosef hid all his money. He had all the money. He hid it. 3 people found. He divided into 3. One was found by Korach, so Korach became wealthy. One was found by Antoninus, which was in the time of Rebbe. He was a Roman emperor. He became very wealthy. And the 3rd will be found with Mashiach. So that's still to be determined if anyone finds it. I just read on the news they found some sort of opening in Haifa. Maybe it's Yosef's treasure. But let's see. Let's just finish off. Another point outside the Gemara said. Yeah, I heard that also. Yes, Haman was fine.
What?
That Haman also found. That's how Haman became wealthy. There's also the Gemara goes through an argument between Rabbi Yochanan and yeah. So then obviously someone didn't. Then either Korach didn't find or Antoninus didn't find.
What?
Elon Musk found it. Yeah. I just want to say this before we learned about the sons of Korach. The Gemara argues about if Korach himself was punished with the rest of the people. Was he swallowed? Was he burnt? Or was he neither? So there's 2 opinions. One opinion was that he wasn't burnt or swallowed. He was punished in his own separate punishment. Actually, the Gemara learns according to that opinion that he wasn't the worst of the group. He actually had good intentions. It was the guys it was the instigators behind Korach that were really bad news. What were they doing? And another opinion was that, on the contrary, he got both punishments. He was burnt, and then his body rolled and was swallowed up in the ground. So he had both punishments. All right. But what about the sons of Korach? Anyone who says Tillim this week is Shabbos V'Barachim, you're going to open up the Tillim, and the Tillim is going to say, Korach. Korach's children are one of the authors of Tillim. How does his children, everyone was swallowed up? Right. What? The Gada. So the Gemara says, because we have in later in Bamidra, it says, the sons of Korach didn't die. What happened? I'm assuming this is Rabbi Kodesh. We've learned they got a special place in hell. They sit there and they say praise. Omer Rabba Babarchan, Rabba son of Chana says, Zimna Chada Hava Ka'azli Ba'orchi. I was walking, Omer Liahu Tayad, a certain Arab told him, a Yishmaeli, Ta Ba'achvele Bule de Korach. I'll show you where Korach was swallowed up, which we have to assume means he was out in the desert somewhere, because they were not in Eretz Yisrael. Ozel Chaza Trey Bizid Hava Kanafa Kitra Minau. He saw a place where there was 2 holes in the ground that smoke was coming out of it because they were still being burnt. Shakal Gavava da Amra Amshe Maya. He took some sort of material of wool that was in water. He wanted to see the effect of this heat, and he put it on top of it, and it burnt. So you saw it was very hot. He says, "Listen, what are you going to hear? That they're still saying something. What are they saying? They're saying Moshe v'Tayrase emes. Moshe is true. His Torah is true. V'heim badoyim, and we are liars." So they acknowledge that they're wrong, and as they were swallowed up, they're still saying till today, Moshe emes v'Tayrase emes. Moshe is true. His Torah is true. Because this story happened 1,000 years later. They're still saying Moshe emes v'Tayrase emes. Moshe is true and his Torah is true. So that gives us a little bit, when we learned the parsha this week, we know a little bit more of the text of the story of what happened.
Yeah,